Remember when I used to upload videos basically every week? Yeah, I remember when I used to do that. Credit where it's due, despite how terrible All Stars was, it was pretty good at keeping me motivated towards making new content. And, you know, unfortunately, I can't say that DC4 is doing the same, at least not anymore. Now, to my credit, I think I've been very charitable towards DC4 as a whole. I've been critical of it, sure, but I've also taken the time to point out what it does right. Most of the episodes are genuinely good. A couple are mediocre, but outside of episode 12, I wouldn't have said that any of these episodes were outright bad. Until episode 20, which is a lot. So this video is probably going to be more negative than usual, and if you have a problem with that, I don't know, just go make your own video. Okay, jokes aside, let's talk about Disventure Camp. Compared to last season's episode 20, this one is very notably better, although that is saying very, very little. There are a lot of places where I could start when talking about this episode, but you know what? I'm just gonna go straight to the end. Zayd gets eliminated in this episode, and as you can probably guess, I'm not happy about it. I'm not heartbroken or anything. I did survive the first half of Mashup Week Losers Round 2, so I can definitely survive this. What gets me about this, though, is that Zayd and maybe Amelie are the only two members of the Final 7 who I don't have any big issues with. Which is crazy, because in episode 19, it felt like everyone was on their A-game, but just one episode later, it feels like all that momentum led to a big fucking car crash. We're gonna start with Jade and Isabel because I have the least to say about them. I have the least to say about them because they are boring. To be more specific, I don't think that Jade and Isabel make for a very interesting duo, but when they're interacting with other people, I think they work better. For Isabel, I really liked the four-way alliance that she had going on the blue team. You know, before she got swapped to the red team, and stopped having anything interesting to do. Jade also has some good interactions. When used properly, she's good at bringing the characters around her down to earth, creating opportunities for interesting personal conversations. But when you put them together like this, they kinda suck. Where is the sauce? These two characters who have been connected since episode 2 have less chemistry than my dad has with strangers at the grocery store. I like what these two had going on in episode 19, but I think I'd like it a lot more if Natalia replaced Jade, because I feel like Natalia can easily fill Jade's role in the final 8 and just do it better. Not only does she have a more interesting dynamic with Isabel, but she's way better connected with the remaining contestants than Jade is. And I feel like those connections lead to some interesting story opportunities. Imagine that Natalia is the one that has to go along with Isabel's tiebreaker plan, and we get to see the cracks in a relationship that has mostly been lighthearted and fun up to this point. Because everyone knows that Natalia is best friends with Isabel, the blowback from the idol play would also fall onto her. So she would have to spend the next episode trying to make inroads with people and find whoever she can work with. It'll probably come up later in the season, but as is, Jade isn't feeling any repercussions for her part in Isabel's idol play, and I wouldn't mind that too much if she had, like, any struggle up to this point. Aside from being in the bottom 2 during Spencer's elimination, Jade's been sailing through this game basically uncontested, which, like, good for her, I guess, but I don't think that's an interesting story to watch unfold. But if you really want to give that story some spice, get rid of Isabel earlier and force Jade to scramble for new allies. Of course, none of those hypotheticals are possible anymore, so my only applicable criticism would be for Odd Nations to split these two up, please. A dubious duo with no sauce. Adam Conover would have totally kicked their asses. Granted, sauceless food is still better than rotten food, so it's a step up from Jake Tom or Jake Aiden, Jake Ali, Jake and anyone for that matter, but I can't have white bread for every meal. Moving on to Anastasia, I'm just gonna make this one quick. She's really starting to wear on me. I like her for the most part. I mean, she's built up a lot of goodwill with me in the pre-merge, but I'm starting to think that she might be stupid. And I love stupid characters, when they're written well and when they're funny, but this is obviously not what Odd Nations is intending for Anastasia to be. What is the point of having Anastasia turn on Zayd? I'm not asking why she did it, the episode made that clear, even if the setup is really dumb. What does the betrayal accomplish narratively? fucking nothing. It's artificial drama just for the sake of it, and that is in no way narratively satisfying. I've seen a lot of people start to compare her to Jake, and to an extent I see what they're getting at. The problem with Jake, or one of the problems anyway, is that he overreacts to every little perceived slight and consistently escalates arguments far beyond the point of reason. Like, if you stepped on his foot, Jake would probably have a confessional talking about how you're a cruel, vindictive person, and how he feels bad for your parents for having to raise you. You know, like a normal 30-year-old man would react in that situation. Anastasia has never gotten that bad for me, but a lot of the time it feels like she's picking fights with people for basically no reason, and that does not make for good drama. I'm going to talk about her role in Zayd's elimination a little bit later, because believe me, we are going to have a lot to talk about when we get there. What I will say is that in this episode specifically, Anastasia is slightly better off than Hannah and Logan, because those two get this really fucking awful scene in the opening. When I first watched this episode, I was genuinely mesmerized by how dog shit this scene was. It really does feel like something out of DCAS. What's wrong with it? Well, there's a couple things. First of all, the scene is just needlessly melodramatic, and by that, I mean the emotions in this scene are running way too high relative to what is actually happening and what the scene actually calls for. Hannah having another mental breakdown really doesn't land as well as Odd Nations probably hoped it would, considering this is like the fourth one, and the scene did not call for it in the slightest. Was this supposed to be brought on by the last vote? I mean, sure, Hannah was allied with Anastasia and Marissa, but I never got the impression that they were friends or even liked each other all that much. If Amelie was the one that got voted out, I think this level of intensity would have been appropriate. But the way it's set up now, it just feels really awkward. Then you have Logan, who... I'm just gonna tell you what he does in this scene, and if you're one of the people who watches my channel and doesn't watch Disventure Camp anymore, I need you to know that I am not making this up. This is something he actually does. So get this right, Hannah is out here bawling her eyes out because her mom is dead and she's still grieving her loss. And in an attempt to comfort her, Logan Bellhop Flips McGee decides to compare Hannah losing her mother to him getting bronze at the Olympics. Not to brag or anything, but I hated him before it was cool. I get that he almost drowned, and that's part of it too, but whatever connection they were trying to make between him and Hannah is completely ruined because this scene is just so heavy-handed. Couple that with unusually bad dialogue, and this scene just feels like bad fanfiction, and really lowered my opinion of both characters, which is a serious feat in Logan's case. I'm not really sure how I'd go about fixing this one, but I do have two suggestions. If you want to give Logan some focus, swap out Hannah for Anastasia. I mean, after the last vote, I think it would make sense for Anastasia to have a small breakdown, and with Logan being her closest bond in the game, he could find a way to comfort her. Cut out the bronze medal comparison and fix up the dialogue, and maybe this one could work. It would also better explain why the two of them would vote Zayd, even if only a little bit. And for Hannah, just swap out Logan for Zayd. I am shocked that Odd Nations was able to write a genuinely interesting dynamic between Hannah and Zayd, and then just decided not to do anything with it. They both voted out each other's allies, but at the end of the day, they're both good people, and I think witnessing Isabel's idol play could bring them together. Imagine a scene where, for once, Zayd and Hannah are able to see eye to eye. I think having a heart-to-heart between the two of them would not only shake up the game, but also I just think it'd be really sweet. But no, for some reason Logan needs to be in every scene and interact with every character, even when it really isn't necessary. Hey Logan, if you really want to make friends, how about you interact with the bottom of the lake again? I think you two worked really well together. Speaking of Zayd, I touched on his elimination earlier, but now I think it's time we take a bigger look at his character as a whole. It's been something of a meme in the DC4 fandom to say that Zayd has no plot relevance despite his high placement, and as much as I love him, I will have to affirm that this is indeed true. But it didn't have to be the case. I don't think Zayd needed to be a part of some big plotline. His charisma alone is enough to carry him through most of his scenes. If Odd Nations decided to capitalize on this, then Zayd could have shown his personality in better detail, and I think people would have really resonated with his character if they did that. But no, apparently he wasn't even worth that much. He is criminally underutilized, to the point where I genuinely have to question why they bothered letting him go this far. What really tells me that they had no plan with Zayd is the way in which he gets eliminated. DC4 has been pretty good with eliminations. Most of them were handled very well, and at worst, some of them felt a bit underwhelming, but nothing was really that bad. Until Zayd's elimination, which is cartoonishly stupid, and the worst part about it is that it didn't have to be that way. Based on what happens in the episode, Hannah and Isabel both have valid reasons for targeting him. Jade is obviously going to vote with Isabel, and Amelie has made up with Hannah by this point, so I could see her joining in on that vote as well. It's not perfect, but it would be a reasonable 4-3 vote, and I think it would at least make sense from a logical perspective. That way you can at least end Zayd's journey on a positive note, and give him a nice closing scene with Anastasia and Logan. I'd rather Zayd just not get eliminated here. I'm not exaggerating. I think I can make a better case for literally anyone else going out aside from him, but I digress. Instead, Logan decides to lie about Zayd in order to save his own ass, and Anastasia believes this because she's not very smart. And these two end up voting him out because a single conversation would have cleared up the entire thing and probably sent Isabel home in a plurality vote. But no, Anastasia jumps the gun because, you know, when Jake did something like this in Season 1, it was believable because his naivete was his major character flaw, and the season established that he wasn't really that smart. Anastasia is supposed to be the complete opposite of that, so why is she pulling a Jake? She should be the last person in this cast to pull a Jake. Hell, keep literally everything else the same, but have Anastasia be the one to lie to Logan. At least then things would kinda make sense. But the contrivance isn't the worst part of this whole thing. No, the worst part is that because they chose to eliminate Zayd in this specific way, they made every character involved look worse. What narrative purpose does this elimination serve? Clearly, it's meant to show that Logan is taking the game more seriously, making big boy plays and lying to people. What it actually does is reveal that he's a massive hypocrite, and now most of the fandom hates him, and I can't imagine that was the goal. And real quick, post-editing Lech Gang here, I want to clarify one thing about Logan. Him being a hypocrite is not necessarily the worst thing in the world. I think it makes him very annoying and unlikable, but from a writing perspective, you could make it work. The problem is because none of the characters call him out on this, and because the narrative still frames him as a good guy, he mostly gets to get away with it scot-free. The writers treat him like this good golden sunshine boy who can do no wrong, despite how much he has done wrong. And I believe this is why he has so many sympathetic scenes with other characters, and these moments where he has this sad puppy dog face as an attempt to try to get us back on his side. His hypocrisy is annoying, but the real problem is the fact that the narrative is letting his hypocrisy slide. And Zayd's elimination is just a really good example of that. The literal only reason why I could imagine they'd want to have Zayd and Anastasia end their relationship like this is if they plan to have them come back in another season and have that rivalry be a big plot point. Something must have happened behind the scenes because this is not how you write a season and this is not how you end a character's run. Look, I can fully admit that Odd Nations never had any big plans for Zayd and that by enjoying him as much as I did, I was riding a sinking ship. But even though I know he had the potential to be an excellent character, that's not why I like him so much. Disventure Camp characters have a habit of, how should I put this? Flying off the handle at the slightest provocation and breaking down like crazy people, and I kinda get tired of them doing that all the time. And when they act like this, they stop feeling like real people. Pretty much everyone in the final 6 has a moment like this, aside from Jade, who's got her own thing going on. But Zayd consistently reads to me as a real, genuine person whose words and actions make sense to me. Most of the reason why I like him comes down to the fact that I like his vibe, but I think that's reason enough for me to like him. I like Tree and Teapot for pretty much the same reason, and unfortunately his elimination is probably right around the corner as well. But low-key, I don't care. I don't care if any of you think that Zayd was underwritten, or boring, or not important. I think he's cool. Based on what I've heard, he's not getting into Season 5, which I think is a shame. Mostly because if they're going for an even gender ratio, the only other option is Logan. And I think I've made it pretty obvious why I don't want that. So yeah, that was episode 20. As happy as I am that this season has been mostly good, it really does feel nice to let out some of my grievances with it. Initially, the video ended here, but since I began writing this script, episode 21 happened as well, so I'll be covering that too. I don't have much to say about episode 21. Well, I do, but not about the actual content of the episode itself. That's fine. And when I say fine, I mean it's standard. This is a very standard episode of Disventure Camp Season 4, and I don't feel very strongly about it either way. I was a lot more negative on it during my initial viewing, but that was probably because episode 20 was still fresh in my mind. There's definitely a few problems with it, but we'll get to that in a little bit. For now, let me just highlight a few things that happen in this episode. Logan and Jade are becoming an actual dynamic, and once again, I reiterate my point that this should have been Natalia. And Logan has another interaction with Isabel where they talk about how people can do evil things without being evil themselves, and I honestly don't mind this scene for Isabel. I don't adore her character like a lot of other people do, and I know earlier in the video I kinda talked down to her a little bit, but out of the remaining 5, I think she's probably the one I most want to win, and whether that speaks positively about her or negatively about everyone else, that's up to you. On Logan's end, I can't help but notice that he's mentioned homophobia quite a few times these past few episodes. Kinda feels like this type of discussion would have worked better earlier in the season, when Logan was still discovering his bisexuality. I wonder why they're pushing this sympathetic angle to Logan's character after Spencer has been eliminated. Gosh, it's almost like they know that people don't like him anymore and they're trying to get you back in his corner. I don't know, that's just my theory. I don't mind the challenge. It was pretty funny watching Anastasia bump into stuff, and while it's not during a vote, Logan flipping his allegiances in the middle of the challenge is very on brand. Actually, while we're on the subject, I understand this might be a weird thing to say, but I think Logan's constant flipping is probably my favorite thing about him. I know I trashed him pretty hard in the last section, but in my opinion, he is very slowly teetering towards so bad it's good territory. As annoying as he is, making fun of Logan Bell brings me joy, and that's more than I could say for the D-Cast Final 3, so he's gotta be doing something right. And low-key, Hannah's about to join him, because what is this?
Logan, you flipped?
Hannah, girly pop. Have you been paying any attention? You just witnessed Zayd lash out at Anastasia and Logan because they flipped on him, and that happened at the previous elimination that you attended less than a week ago. Girly, are you good? I can't even be mad because I'm genuinely awestruck by this scene. The fact that Jared had the audacity to make her say that, honestly, I respect it. Dare I say, I think I want more scenes like this in the season going forward. I'll explain why in a moment because it'll be my closing thoughts of the video, but real quick, let's talk about Amelie. Obviously, she was a returnee, she wasn't gonna win, her elimination was gonna happen sooner or later without too much fanfare, and come this most recent episode, here we are. I won't lie, her character writing post-rejoin hasn't been perfect, especially due to all the heavy-handed comparisons to Hannah, but overall, I fuck with Amelie. I wasn't sold on her rejoining at first, but I feel like she provided to this season in a meaningful way. At her best, she was an enjoyable character, had a couple of funny moments, and she incited some interesting conflict. It's not exactly what I wanted for her, but I'm glad that the season expanded upon some of her potential, because in my opinion, she's the last character who hasn't overstayed her welcome. You might be tempted to ask what I mean by that, but I promise you already know. I want to take a moment to talk about burnout. I am burnt out of this season, and I'm willing to bet that most of you are as well. The general consensus on DC4 is that, despite its flaws, this is the best season of the show by a wide margin, and I agree with this. But discourse surrounding the post-merge part of the game seems to be mostly negative, which is strange because compared to the pre-merge, I don't think that much has changed. The writing, I would argue, is consistent. I mean, sure, post-merge had episode 20, but pre-merge had episode 12, so that evens out. The characters have definitely started to wane on me as time goes on, but I don't think that's due to any drastic personality changes or derailments. No, the biggest problem with this season, and the reason why I believe so many people have started to turn against it, is because it's too long. DC4 is a good season as a whole, but too much of a good thing will eventually turn sour. You could have a world-class chef serve you the best meal you've ever eaten, but eventually you will get full, and if they keep trying to serve you more food, you're gonna get tired of eating. And while I think 26 episodes would have been too long regardless, the fact that the first few seasons only had 13 episodes makes this one feel even longer in comparison. I think Total Drama makes the extra runtime work because the atmosphere is generally pleasant, so we don't mind spending so much time with the characters. That's also one of the reasons why the show started going downhill after World Tour, because the tone became a lot more mean-spirited and, as such, less fun. Have you ever been in a group where 2 or more people have had a falling out? That feeling when you're watching these people that you know very well fight each other while showing you their ugly side? Yeah, that's the kind of atmosphere that Disventure Camp's post-merge episodes start to cultivate after a while. And while I could handle it in seasons 1 and 2 because they were short, season 4 is really starting to test my patience. I've mostly enjoyed my time with this season, but all things considered, I'm ready for it to be over. That's why I kinda hope we get more scenes like, "Logan, you flipped?" Because that's funny and it breaks up the monotony. Take advantage of how stupid some of these scenes are. I think it'll really help out. You know what? Fuck it, I'm gonna play it again.
Logan, you flipped?
What do you think she's gonna say next? Anastasia, you're gay? Please, God, let her say some stupid shit like this. I need that. So that was episode 21. It was okay, nothing special, but do you want to know who is special? All of the Lech Gang channel members. So I want to give a big shout out to Sheepishly, Novaz, Skohei, Factually False, Sour Guts, Nachos Dragon, Shoelace, Commander Cone, MI37000, Kosa, and one other channel member. Honestly, the coolest grouping of 10 people that I can think of right now. And if you'd like to join that cool group, consider donating to the channel. You don't have to join the membership program if you can't afford it. Don't get me wrong, I love money, but I'm not in financial straits or anything like that, so only donate what you feel comfortable donating. But there is something you can do that is free and would help both of us out. If you like this video and want to see more like it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe because it really does help out. I'm working on a few different projects in the background, so I promise I have been busy. So far, I don't think YouTube's new policy has affected my channel, so we're good for the time being at least. Expect more things to come in the future, but for now, I bid you adieu. Goodbye.